is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Shelagh Fogarty.
Hello, good afternoon to you if you're just joining us here at LBC. Sadly, we know by now, don't we, since Grenfell, that millions of people are caught up in the building safety scandal, and it is a scandal. Since 72 people died at Grenfell, around 200,000 high-rise buildings are wrapped in flammable materials like or similar to the stuff that was wrapped around Grenfell. And 1.2 million modern flats, so up to 5% of private homes in England, could be, as a result of this, unmortgageable for years, unsellable as well from the point of view of the person who lives in it. MPs on the Housing Select Committee found repairs could cost £15 billion, and the government, for its part, has set aside just £1.6 billion in grant funding to help do that. Clearly, the private sector is part of this story as well. But now there are fears that hundreds of thousands of flat owners could be forced to take on loans which are essentially mortgage-type loans over 30-year periods to fix fire safety defects. Campaigners say that they think one of the risks of the government proposals would leave leaseholders in negative equity, unable to sell their flats, even if they were able to. And it will hit those who can least afford it the hardest, while developers, builders and freeholders of dangerous blocks can escape that particular trauma. If this is you, if you're caught up in this, and I know that day by day more people are finding out that they are, let me know what your situation is at the moment, what you're attempting to do about it. Sebastian O'Kelly joins me first, so Chief Executive of the charity Leasehold Knowledge Partnership. Good afternoon to you, Sebastian.
Hi there.
Why is this such a fear, do you think, this risk of having to, or being expected to take out these 30-year loans?
Well, leaseholders are absolutely right to think that it's a complete betrayal of everything that has been said hitherto. I mean, both Prime Ministers Theresa May and Boris Johnson and numerous junior ministers have repeated that leaseholders should not pay, and now, lo and behold, they are. The government wasted 2 years pleading with freeholders, that's the building owners, or more accurately, the secretive and often offshore speculators in a building's income streams, to do the decent thing and pay up for their buildings, and not one did so. Some developers did, and Legal & General did at a site where it owns a shopping centre underneath some flats, but that's it. The rest of this bill is heading for people who bought the flats in good faith. And
this is it's not sort of a concrete plan yet, is it? But we know that earlier in the summer, the Housing Minister appointed Michael Wade to advise on how to protect leaseholders. And there are rumours, or perhaps you can tell me more, but there are rumours saying he's considering these long-term loans as a means of allowing people to pay over a much longer period of time.
Well, Michael Wade is addressing the parliamentary meeting, the all-party parliamentary group on leasehold on Thursday, which we're the secretariat. But, in the Sunday Times yesterday, one reads that he's an insurance multimillionaire living in a £12 million stately home, and he's going to tell leaseholders in Liverpool, say, living pretty precariously in £80,000 flats, that they're going to have to take out a massive loan, £25,000, to remedy the building failures that were absolutely nothing to do with them. That's the situation at a site called Haysmore Heights in Liverpool. Meanwhile, the private equity ground rent investors in the building, in the offshore Abacus land, part of the secretive Long Harbour Fund, pays nothing at all. Indeed, it continues to graze off the ground rents and might clean up with any development potential at the site. I just don't think this is going to fly. I think members of the public are going to be aghast at the unfairness of this.
One calculation, the kind of loan you've just described there, that one calculation is that it would add £1,000 to £1,500 a year to household bills at interest rates of 3%.
Yes, and it will completely devalue these properties. I mean, who's going to buy a flat with a 25,000 quid debt on it if you can buy one without? So the implications of this are going to be tremendous. I think a wider point I'd like to make, if I may, is just that we have an absolutely toxic house building culture in this country. It's massively subsidised, with £16 billion riding on Help to Buy purchases, and it's about to be the recipient of yet more public money through Build, Build, Build. And how does it repay us all for this credulous generosity, with rip-off leases with doubling ground rents, sales of residential freeholds, the income streams to apartment buildings to sort of dodgy and often anonymous offshore punters, and build spectacularly badly with tragic consequences over Grenfell. And it has now ruined a generation of first-time buyers. What is the point?
What do you expect? Sorry, go on.
What's the point of build, which Boris Johnson repeats, to get a new generation of first-time buyers onto the housing ladder when the present generation of first-time buyers is facing utter ruin because of this?
How can they and charities like yours fight this if it's brought forward? I mean, obviously MPs will have plenty to say about it because they'll have constituents facing the kind of situations you've just described. But it's important to say it isn't policy yet that these loans be brought in. It's thought to be a recommendation.
They're testing the waters, I would say. But what needs to be explored is, there is this issue. Was government to blame, regulatory failure to blame, or were the developers to blame? And it is a bit of both, I would say. But anyway, given that government and developers work so closely, rather unhealthily closely together, both can sort it out. A huge levy on these house builders and the freeholders would be appropriate to sort out this cladding crisis, and we're going to put forward a detailed proposal of this at the parliamentary meeting on Thursday.
And that's a levy that you say they collectively can afford in a way that individuals cannot?
Correct. And where there are other examples of an industry paying collectively for an industry-wide failure in the pension industry, for example, and in other jurisdictions. So, they are responsible for this mess, not the consumers that bought this, unwittingly bought these flawed products, and they can pay to put it right.
Do you believe, you might not know this one way or another, but I wonder what your thoughts are, that when the Grenfell Inquiry, whenever it is that the Grenfell Inquiry reports back, depending on where blame and responsibility lands, do you think that could have an implication for campaigns such as your own?
Yes, I do. What's coming out of the Grenfell Inquiry is absolutely shocking.
Oh, some of the testimony has been staggering, hasn't it?
Yes, and if we find that there's corporate manslaughter charges involved here, then the agenda will change. What it's doing is shining a spotlight on a very unhealthy relationship between building safety regulators and the house building sector, which has routinely been marking its own homework. And the focus is really on institutions like the housing sectors, building research establishment in Watford and so on, and finding out what exactly has gone wrong. And it's just looking very bad.
Thank you very much for talking to us today, Sebastian. Sebastian O'Kelly, Chief Executive of the charity Leasehold Knowledge Partnership. If you are caught up in this in any way, I'd love to hear from you. What's it doing to your life, having this sort of Damocles hanging over you? What have you tried to do to sort the problem for yourself? 0345 6060 973, the number to call. You can text 84850 or tweet at LBC. Isabel has called already. Isabel in Slough, hello.
Hello, good afternoon, Sheila, and thank you so much for taking our calls because it's a very important matter.
It is.
Matter for so many of us. My situation is not very different from other people, except that I do not have Grenfell type cladding or HPL cladding. My building is just a normal brick-clad, render-clad building. But what there is a problem of cavity barriers, and it is, I would say, 8 out of 10 buildings have a problem of cavity barriers, and these were not put right from the beginning, at the beginning of construction by the builders. So, in my view, it is definitely the builders. I know that the precedent caller talked about the freeholders, but also the builders are immensely responsible for what we are going through at the moment. They should have built the buildings in a proper way.
Well, there's such a relationship, isn't there, between builders, freeholders, builders, regulations and government?
Everything is very much linked indeed. But I would say that my builder, he's the one who built without cavity barriers. It's not the freeholder, because the builder, after a certain number of years, what they do, they usually sell the freehold to one of those entities, offshore entities. But it's not my freeholder who built the building wrong. It is the builder who built the building wrong.
Mm.
Yes?
And what effect is this having on you, Isabel?
Well, I've been in the campaign on Twitter and with other people all the time. I'm thinking of it all the time. It's a massive, massive expense. People think that it is only cladding, that it's going to be very expensive. But to retrofit cavity barriers in a building, there is a building in Salford. They do not have combustible cladding or combustible insulation. But those people have been billed between 80 and 100,000 pounds per flat. For cavity barriers, it's not cladding. But the cavity barriers are not eligible for the building safety fund. So you have thousands and thousands of buildings which are ineligible. And what we have asked and what we keep asking the government is to levy the developers because they are responsible for all this. And I like the fact that you mentioned fire safety defects because we've heard so much cladding. Fire safety defects, it's what we are at the moment, is that the cladding, HPL or ACM, Grenfell type cladding, we're just the tip of the iceberg, but when...
It's more complex and it involves the inside of homes as well, doesn't it? Yeah, in some cases,
yes, absolutely. Internal compartmentation, it's a disaster. It's a massive indictment of the building industry.
Are you still able to enjoy your home?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I cannot wait to exit. This is where we are.
Will you be able to, do you think?
But no, we have first to repair. And I hope that the government will come up with an innovative solution, as they say, that does not involve us paying, because they've said we shouldn't pay. The government keeps saying the leaseholders are not responsible. But they do everything to make us responsible. It's unacceptable what's happening. It's a scandal.
It is. Isabel, thank you for calling. Isabel in Slough. You can hear, you can hear just by the fluency in Isabel how much she's had to learn, and many people like her have had to learn and fast about their buildings. Because these are plural, costly and dangerous mistakes that have been made. More of your calls in a moment. I can see them coming in. It's 3:15.
LBC